The relentless sun hung high in the azure sky like a branding iron over Silver Creek, a dusty frontier town teetering on the brink of the untamed West. Dust devils danced across the parched main street, where weathered wooden saloons and mercantile stores leaned against each other like weary cowboys after a long cattle drive. The signs above them creaked mournfully in the hot, dry wind that carried the scent of sagebrush and horse sweat. A motley crowd had gathered in the town square, roughneck cowboys with spurs jingling on their boots, miners whose faces were etched with coal dust and hardship, and stern ranch wives fanning themselves with folded newspapers, their eyes sharp and judgmental. Flies buzzed lazily around sweat-soaked collars, and the air was thick with the mingled odors of unwashed bodies, cheap whiskey, and desperation. This was auction day, a monthly spectacle where the workhouse emptied its human cargo onto the block, selling labor to the highest bidder like so much livestock. A wiry auctioneer, his hat stained dark with sweat and his mustache twisted into a perpetual sneer, stood on a rickety platform made of splintered boards. He banged his gavel against an old barrel with a sharp crack that echoed across the square. "Step right up, good folks of Silver Creek," he hollered, his voice carrying a nasal twang honed from years of hawking everything from snake oil to human souls. "We've got prime stock from the workhouse pens, girls fit for scrubbing floors, tending kitchens, or whatever your fancy might be. Next up, Eliza Thorne, just turned 18, with a back strong as an ox and hands built for heavy lifting. Straight from the coal sorting lines. Starting bid at $1 shiny. Eliza Thorne stood there on the platform, her head bowed low, the plain calico dress clinging to her sturdy frame like a second skin worn thin from endless toil. Her dark hair fell forward like a curtain, veiling her face and hiding eyes the color of fresh sagebrush after a rare rain green. Piercing but hardened by years of cruelty. At 18, she was no wilting flower. Her broad shoulders spoke of hauling coal sacks in the dim workhouse. Depths, her roughened hands bore calluses from scrubbing and sorting that no amount of lye soap could erase. She wasn't the delicate, pretty thing the town prized in its brides or saloon girls. She was built solid, practical, the kind folks called hefty or plain as prairie dirt. The crowd shifted, murmuring low, their laughter bubbling up like venom from a rattler's fangs. $1 hellfire, I wouldn't pay a plugged nickel for that ox of a gon, one cowboy jeered, eliciting chuckles from his companions. The auctioneer, sensing the tide turning against him, wiped his brow and lowered the bid. "Come on now, folks, 75 cents. She's sturdy, won't break under a load." Silence hung heavy, broken only by a cough and more snickers. 50 cents. 25. The laughter grew bolder, crueler. Eliza's fists clenched at her sides, hidden in the folds of her dress. She'd endured the workhouse whips that cracked like thunder, the endless hours sorting coal and choking dust, the leering guards who saw her as less than human. But this paraded like a lame horse at market, her worth measured in pennies cut deeper than any lash. She bit the inside of her cheek to hold back tears, a hard-learned lesson from childhood: never show weakness, or it'll be used against you like a spur in flesh. From the edge of the crowd, a shadow stirred, tall and imposing. Heavy boots thudded against the hard-packed dirt, sending small puffs of dust into the air. The throng parted like prairie grass, before a stampede, whispers dying on lips as eyes turned to the figure emerging. He was a towering Apache warrior, 6'4" of raw power, wrapped in fringed buckskin that strained over muscles forged in desert battles and mountain skirmishes. His long black hair was braided with eagle feathers that fluttered slightly in the breeze, and his face bore scars like badges of honor, jagged lines from cavalry sabers and bandit knives. Eyes sharp as an eagle's talons gleamed beneath the wide brim of a weathered hat, scanning the crowd with the wariness of a predator in hostile territory. This was Grey Wolf, a legend whispered around campfires. Once a scout for the army, now a renegade living on the fringes, feared by white settlers for his fierce independence, respected by his tribe for his unyielding spirit. A rifle was slung across his back, a long knife sheathed at his belt, glinting ominously in the sunlight. His voice rumbled like distant thunder rolling over the plains. "I'll take her." With a flick of his wrist, a silver dollar arced through the hot air, catching the sun's glare like a shooting star, before landing at the auctioneer's feet with a metallic clink. "That enough, white man?" The auctioneer bent to scoop it up, his eyes wide with a mix of greed and fear. Yeah, Mr. Wolf, she's all yours. Gasps rippled through the crowd like wind through dry grass. That savage buying a white gal, Lord have mercy on her soul, one woman hissed, clutching her bonnet. Reckon she's headed for them hills, never to be seen again. Grey Wolf strode forward, his presence commanding silence. He reached up and lifted Eliza onto the back of his wagon with effortless strength, as if she weighed no more than a sack of feathers. She landed softly on the hay-strewn bed, her heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. What manner of fate awaited her? He climbed onto the driver's seat, snapped the reins with a sharp crack, and the team of horses lurched forward. The wagon rattled out of town, kicking up clouds of dust that swallowed the stairs and whispers behind them. Eliza stole one last glance back, faces twisted in shock and pity, before the trail curved away, leaving Silver Creek in the haze. The wagon jolted over rocky trails that wound upward into the jagged Sierra Mountains, where the land grew wilder with every mile. Towering cacti stood like silent sentinels along the path, their arms raised in eternal surrender to the harsh sun. Coyotes howled in the distance, their eerie cries echoing off red rock cliffs. Eliza gripped the wooden side of the wagon tightly, the wind whipping her hair into tangles as she stole glances at Grey Wolf's broad back. He sat silent as stone, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon for signs of danger. Bandits lurking in Arroyo's cavalry patrols on the prowl, or perhaps even rival tribes. The air grew cooler as they ascended, carrying the sharp scent of pine and earth, a far cry from the stifling dust of the town square. Hours blurred into one another, the sun whirling across the sky like a fiery wheel. Eliza's mind raced with questions. Why her? What did this Apache want with a workhouse girl like her? Rumors she'd heard in the pens painted his kind as ruthless warriors, scalpers of settlers. But his touch when lifting her had been surprisingly gentle, devoid of malice. As the sun dipped low, painting the skies in streaks of blood red and gold, they crested a final ridge. Below lay a sturdy log cabin, nestled against the mountainside, its walls hewn from thick pines, a stone chimney rising straight and true. A small barn stood nearby, with chickens clucking in a fenced coop, and a corral holding a pair of strong horses. It wasn't the crude savage dwelling she'd feared, no teepee of hides, but a solid frontiersman's homestead built to withstand blizzards and raids alike. Grey Wolf pulled the wagon to a halt, the horses snorting and stamping. He jumped down and offered his hand to help her descend, his calloused palms rough, yet careful. "Your room's inside," he said, his voice deep and resonant like the rumble of a distant waterfall. "Stew's simmering on the fire. Rest up, been a long trail." Eliza hesitated at the threshold, her boots scraping the wooden porch. "Why? Why me?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the evening breeze. He paused, his massive silhouette framed against the twilight sky. "Saw the chains in your eyes, girl. The invisible ones the white man's world forges. No soul deserves that cage." With that, he turned and strode to the barn, leaving her alone with the warm glow spilling from the open door. Inside, the cabin enveloped her in unexpected comfort. The hearth crackled merrily, casting flickering shadows on the walls lined with shelves of dried goods and tools. A pot bubbled over the flames, filling the air with the savory aroma of venison stew laced with wild onions and herbs. The furniture was sturdy and handmade, a heavy oak table chairs with seats woven from rawhide, a root cellar hatch in the floor. Through a side door, she found her room a real bed, piled with a quilt patterned in stars and moons, a small window with actual glass panes that caught the last rays of sunset, even a rag rug on the plank floor. It was luxury beyond her wildest dreams after years of workhouse bunks shared with rats and despair. She ladled stew into a bowl and ate slowly, savoring the warmth that spread through her weary body. Through the window, she watched Grey Wolf tend to the horses, his movements efficient and graceful, a far cry from the brutish savage the townsfolk described. Was he her savior, or something more sinister lurking beneath? As night deepened, moonlight spilled through her window like silver rivers. Eliza lay under the soft quilt, but sleep eluded her, her mind a whirlwind of memories. 2 years back, the workhouse had been raided under cover of darkness, flames leaping high as Apache warriors clashed with outlaw bandits seeking supplies. Guns blazed, screams pierced the night. Amid the chaos, a dying Apache scout, his body riddled with bullets, had staggered toward her hiding spot in the coal shed. Blood bubbled from his lips as he thrust a bundled blanket into her arms. "Take him. Protect my son." The baby inside had cried softly, his tiny face copper-hued with dark hair and eyes sly as a fox's. She'd hidden him in the coal bins, smuggling scraps of food and milk stolen from the kitchens, naming him Little Fox for those clever eyes that seemed to understand her whispers. For months she'd kept him secret, her only light in the darkness. But the guards discovered him one cruel dawn, wrenching him away to who knows where. The guilt had weighed on her like a millstone ever since a constant ache in her chest. Unable to bear the torment, she slipped out of bed barefoot on the cool floor and padded silently to the barn. The door creaked open, revealing the soft snorts of horses in their stalls. Under a loose board in the corner, she found her hidden crate, her only possessions from the workhouse. Inside, a tiny beaded rattle, smooth from handling, and a scrap of blanket pieced from soft fabrics. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched them to her chest. "Little Fox, forgive me for failing you," she whispered to the stars visible through a crack in the roof. The night air was crisp, carrying the hoot of an owl, but her heart felt heavier than the mountains themselves. Dawn broke with mountain mist curling through the pines like ghostly fingers. Eliza rose before the sun, her body trained by years of workhouse routine to anticipate labor. She dressed in her faded dress, smoothing it as best she could, and set to work sweeping the hearth, the broom's bristles whispering against the stone. Outside, Grey Wolf was already at it, his axe rising and falling in a steady rhythm that split logs with precision, stacking them neatly beside the chopping block. She stole glances at him through the window, his movements powerful yet controlled, like a river carving through rock. No barked orders came, no demands for breakfast or chores. The silence felt strange, almost freeing after a lifetime of commands and punishments. Venturing outside to gather eggs from the coop, she felt his eyes on her briefly. He nodded once, a simple acknowledgement, then returned to his task. The next day followed the same pattern. No expectations voiced, just quiet coexistence. Eliza found herself anticipating needs, seeing him haul water from the pump. She grabbed a bucket to help. He showed her how to prime the handle just right, his huge hands moving with surprising gentleness. Like this easy does it, let the water flow natural. On the third day, she discovered tools in the lean-to shed, a hoe for the kitchen, garden shears for the sheep grazing in the upper meadow. Again, he offered guidance without demand, correcting her grip with a patient touch. The cabin itself surprised her with its orderliness. Beyond her room and his, there was a root cellar stocked with preserved foods, jars of berries, dried meat, sacks of flour. Everything had its place, from the cooking pots hanging by the hearth to the stack of kindling. It wasn't the crude bachelor's den she'd imagined, but a real home maintained with care that spoke of a man who valued stability in a chaotic world. Evenings brought a rhythm of their own. As shadows lengthened, Eliza ladled stew into bowls, and they ate in silence, broken only by the clink of spoons and the pop of logs in the fire. But questions had been building in her like storm clouds, pressing against the quiet until she could hold them no longer. "Why'd you really buy me?" she asked one night, her voice barely above a whisper, but filling the room like smoke. Grey Wolf set down his spoon, his deep-set eyes meeting hers across the table. "Because you look done with cruelty, girl. Apache know what it's like to be auctioned off, herded like cattle onto reservations. Saw that fire in you, dimmed but not out. Figured you deserved a chance to fan it back to life." His words struck deep, unlocking something long buried. Tears welled up, spilling over for the first time in years. She ducked her head, letting her hair hide her face, but the dam had broken. That night, sleep evaded her again. She tossed until the moon hung high, then slipped out to the barn once more. The horses breathed softly in the darkness as she retrieved her hidden treasures, the rattle and blanket. Clutching them, she stared toward the distant lights of Silver Creek, barely visible through the trees. Guilt pressed heavier than ever. Here was Grey Wolf offering shelter without demands, while she harbored secrets that could bring ruin. Torn between fleeing and hoping for a place free of cruelty, she whispered prayers to the night. The mountain morning arrived with the familiar creak of wagon wheels on the trail. Eliza looked up from hanging linens on a line, her hands freezing on the damp cloth. She knew that sound. Old Travis's wagon had a distinctive squeal in its front axle that carried for miles. Her heart began to pound as the vehicle emerged from the tree line. Old Travis sat hunched over the reins, his weather-beaten hat pulled low, his face lined with the kindness of a man who'd seen too much hardship to judge others. Beside him on the seat was a covered bundle that made Eliza's breath catch in her throat. Gray Wolf stepped out of the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. He stood quietly watching as the wagon drew closer. "Morning, folks," Travis called out, pulling his team to a halt. "Brought something that needs delivering." His eyes found Eliza's and he gave a slight nod. The bundle moved. "Mama." A small voice emerged from beneath the blanket. Eliza ran forward as Travis pulled back the cover, revealing a small boy with dark hair and soft copper skin. Little Fox reached out his arms, his face lighting up with recognition. "My boy," Eliza sobbed, lifting him from the wagon seat. "My precious boy." She clutched him close, tears streaming, as she buried her nose in his hair, breathing in his familiar scent. Little Fa wrapped his little arms around her neck, patting her wet cheek with a chubby hand. "Mama sing?" he asked innocently. "Yes, baby. Mama will sing for you." She managed through her tears, rocking him gently. Travis climbed down his joints, creaking as much as his wagon. His expression turned grave as he approached Grey Wolf. "Trouble's stirring," he said in a low voice, though Eliza could hear. "Over in Dry Gulch, about 3 days west, someone's posted a bounty asking after a half-breed toddler." He glanced at Little Fox, who was now playing with Eliza's hair. "Don't know who's behind it, but they're poking around. Thought you ought to know." Grey Wolf stood with arms folded, his face unreadable as granite. After a long moment, he gave a single nod. "He stays. I'll handle it." Travis relaxed slightly. "Figured you'd say that. You always had a way with handling things, Wolf." He turned to his wagon, pulling out a small sack. "Brought sugar candy for the little one and thread for mending." Eliza reached for her hidden coin purse, but Grey Wolf was already pressing silver into Travis's hand. "Much obliged. Rest before heading back." Travis shook his head. "Best I move on. Less I know, better for all." He tipped his hat to Eliza and Little Fox. "God keep you safe, ma'am." They watched the wagon disappear down the trail, its creak fading into the mountain quiet. Little Fox had dozed off against Eliza's shoulder, exhausted from his journey. "I should have told you," Eliza whispered, not daring to look at Grey Wolf. "About Little Fox, about everything." "When you were ready," he replied, simply gesturing toward the cabin. "Best get him settled inside." That evening, as darkness gathered outside the windows, new sounds filled the home. The soft scratch of Grey Wolf's tools as he worked on an old cradle in the corner, sanding rough spots and tightening joints. The creak of Eliza's rocking chair by the fire, her voice soft and sweet as she sang hymns from her childhood. "Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so." Little Fox drowsed in her lap, his small fingers curled around a piece of sugar candy, his face peaceful in the firelight. The familiar weight of him made her feel whole again, as if a missing piece of her soul had returned. A profound peace settled over the cabin, natural as the darkness over the mountains. But beneath it lay fragility like thin ice over deep water. Eliza tightened her arms protectively around Little Fox, sensing the alertness in Grey Wolf's quiet work. The cradle took shape under his hands, each stroke bringing out the wood's warm glow, a tangible promise of safety, a declaration that whatever storms brewed in Dry Gulch would face the warrior's resolve. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, the air alive with birdsong. Grey Wolf stood by his horse, carefully wrapping Little Fox in a soft blanket, while Eliza hovered nearby, twisting her apron in worry. "Please," she whispered, "don't take him down there. The town ain't kind to his kind." Grey Wolf settled the boy in front of the saddle, his large hands gentle. "Boy deserves dignity. Can't hide him like he's something shameful." He looked down at Eliza, his eyes softening just a fraction. "Trust me." Little Fox giggled as Grey Wolf swung into the saddle, tiny hands reaching for the horse's mane. The sight of the massive Apache cradling the small boy would have been comical if the stakes weren't so high. "I'll have him back by noon," Grey Wolf promised, turning the horse toward town. The morning bustle of Silver Creek slowed to a halt as Grey Wolf rode down Main Street. Women paused in their shopping baskets, dangling, forgotten. Men halted conversations outside the barbershop, cigars halfway to lips. Little Fox, oblivious to the tension, pointed at a dog sleeping in the dust. "Whoop!" he exclaimed happily. Grey Wolf dismounted in front of the general store, lifting the boy down with care. The child stayed close to his leg as they entered the bell, jingling above the door. Mrs. Whitaker, the storekeeper's wife, froze behind the counter, her cheerful greeting dying on her lips. Customers browsing shelves grew still as statues. "Mornin'," Grey Wolf said, his deep voice filling the silence. He placed one protective hand on Little Fox's shoulder. This here's Little Fox. He's under my protection now. The words hung heavy, carrying the weight of mountain stone. Sheriff Blake pushed through the swinging doors drawn by the whispers racing through town. His hand rested near his gun belt as he studied the scene. Wolf, what the aim, he said carefully. This the boy folks been talking about from Dry Gulch. This is my boy, Grey Wolf replies evenly. Any man with questions brings them to me direct. The sheriff's jaw worked silently. Everyone knew Grey Wolf's reputation from Army Scout days, stories of his prowess with that long knife. But he was also known as a man of his word, never starting trouble without cause. Might be some folks take issue with arrangements, Blake said slowly. Might be some folks need to mind their own damn business, Grey Wolf answered. He looked down at Little Fox. Pick yourself a piece of candy, son. Then we'll head home to your mama. Tension crackled like dry lightning as Little Fox carefully selected a peppermint stick from the jar. Mrs. Whitaker held out wordlessly, her hands trembling. Grey Wolf placed a coin on the counter, nodded to the sheriff, and led the boy out. The sun was high when they returned to the cabin. Eliza rushed out, gathering Little Fox in her arms, checking him over as if expecting wounds. But the boy just proudly showed his candy-sticky fingers waving. That afternoon, Preacher Jenkins's buggy rattled up the trail. The elderly minister looked troubled as he eased down from the seat, gripping his Bible like a shield. Brother Wolf, he said, need to have words if you'll spare the time. They sat on the porch while Eliza took Little Fox inside for a nap. The preacher spoke quietly about old tensions from railroad raids 3 winters past, when rogue warriors burned supplies and killed settlers. Wounds ain't at healed. Town's got long memory. The boy's presence will stir trouble. Grey Wolf replied, then hearts need stirring. After the preacher left, darkness gathered early with storm clouds from the west. That evening, as thunder rolled distant, Eliza finally spoke her truth. Little Fox's pa was an Apache scout, she said softly, watching the fire. Raid on the workhouse by rivals. He saved me, got me safe. Never knew his name. 9 months later. She glanced toward the bedroom where Little Fox slept. Grey Wolf listened in silence. When she finished, he reached into his shirt and pulled out a leather pouch, withdrawing the letter sealed with a feather yellowed with age. Never opened it, he said, placing it on the table. Some truths take time to face. The letter lay like a bridge between past and present. As the storm drew closer, spring settled into the valley like a gentle hand smoothing wrinkles. Morning frost gave way to green shoots, wildflowers dotting the meadow below the cabin. Eliza moved with growing confidence, her once hunched shoulders straightening as she worked alongside Grey Wolf, building a new chicken coop. She handed him nails-held boards, steady, learning the satisfaction of creation. Like this, she'd ask, and he'd nod, measure twice, cut once. Little Fox toddled between them, clutching a wooden horse Grey Wolf had carved, his laughter echoing as he chased butterflies through the clean mountain dirt. Sometimes he'd bring Eliza pretty rocks or feathers, and she'd tuck them in her apron like treasures. Evenings, while Eliza cleaned after supper, Grey Wolf sat by the fire with his carving knife shavings curling at his feet as toys took shape, a little wagon spinning top. Little Fox watched wide-eyed until sleep claimed him, but peace proved fragile. Preacher Jenkins's buggy appeared again one afternoon. The minister's face was drawn as he settled on the porch. That letter weighs on my mind, Wolf. The Lord doesn't give burdens without purpose. Grey Wolf's knife stilled. Through the window, Eliza's singing to Little Fox drifted out. Some truths hurt more than help, Grey Wolf replied, and some hurts fester worse for hiding. The preacher countered. He stood, joints creaking. Read it, brother, before choices can't be unmade. That night, after Eliza and Little Fox slept, Grey Wolf sat by the dying fire. The letter in his broad hands, seal intact. The eagle feather caught the light as he turned it over. Finally, he broke the seal. The paper was thin, covered in neat script. To the one who holds this letter, I am Singing Bird, widow of Swift Arrow, who served as scout with honor. Our son was born as winter stars filled the sky. We named him Little Fox for the sacred earth that gives life. When raiders came, Swift died protecting his unit. I fled with our band. In the chaos, Little Fox was lost. I have searched these 3 years following whispers. The army wives speak of you as a man of honor who knew my husband. I trust you will help my boy find his way home when paths clear. A mother's heart knows no borders. Little fox carries his father's spirit in my prayers. Tell him he is loved. Singing bird. Gray wolf folded it slowly, his weathered face unreadable. Through the wall, little fox's soft breathing mixed with Eliza's quiet humming. The same week as spring rains washed Silver Creek's streets, the telegraph clattered. Attention agent land, acquisition priority for extension. Agent Victor Slade en route. Maintain discretion. Change was coming like a locomotive. Dawn painted the mountains gold as Gray Wolf saddled his horse. The letter weighed heavy in his pocket as he rode down the trail toward Silver Creek. His gut told him that telegram spelled trouble. The telegraph office was quiet in the early light. The operator jumped when Gray Wolf's shadow darkened the door. Mighty early, he said, fidgeting. News travels fast, even up trails, Gray Wolf replied. The operator's eyes darted to papers. Can't discuss private messages. Ain't asking details. Just a storm brewing. Before an answer, a polished carriage rolled past a man in Eastern suit. Stepping down, Victor Slade had arrived. By mid-morning, Slade set up in the hotel, his voice smooth as oil. Progress requires vigilance. Can't have mixed bloods infiltrating Christian communities. We've seen raids from inside knowledge. Sheriff Blake nodded. Sunday's church social buzzed with whispers. Ladies drew skirts back when Eliza passed with Little Fox. Heard that Indian woman's alive, livin' wild. Eliza held her head high, but her fingers trembled. That night, while Gray Wolf gathered information, heavy boots crunched on the cabin porch. Open up, Sheriff Blake's voice thundered. Eliza clutched Little Fox, backing away. What do you want? Papers for the boy. Open or we break it. He's just a baby. The door splintered. Eliza ran to Little Fox, wailing. Rough hands seized her. She fought, scratching, kicking. Cuffs snapped on. Deputies mounted with the boy when hooves thundered. Gray Wolf launched from his horse, rage dark. Let him go. Law's law, Wolf. Fists crashed, bodies slammed, blood sprayed. But guns drew knife at Eliza's throat. Enough arrested both. Little Fox scrambled into darkness as lantern bobbed through woods, but he vanished like smoke. Stone-holding cell in Silver Creek's jail felt colder than any workhouse. Iron bars cast shadows as morning light crept in. Eliza's shoulders ached, but her heart cut deeper. A Little Fox out there alone. Word of violence spread like wildfire. Women whispered in doorways, men debated in the saloon. Preacher Jenkins visited with water and prayer. The Lord watches his lambs. Her hymn rose, Amazing Grace. It drew women outside listening. Hearts touched, they brought gifts. Bread clean, dressed stew. Gray Wolf mounted before dawn, provisions packed for Fort Thunder. Storm broke, fierce lightning sleet. He spotted a line shack, led his horse inside, built a fire. From his pocket, Little Fox's rattle. Memories, boys' laughter, Eliza's song. At dawn, he rode on. Fort gates loomed. Need Agent Harris, about Swift Arrow's boy. The name opened doors. Harris read the letter. Swift saved me twice. Boy has rights. They drafted declarations citing treaties. Sunday dawn clear. Preacher Jenkins preached from Ezekiel. Sins of Sodom weren't who they were, but treating strangers cruel. Hearts stirred. Monday gifts piled for Eliza. Tuesday, Gray Wolf returned with papers. Hearing tomorrow. Word spread. Preacher visited, justice comes. The schoolhouse creaked with the bodies. Sun filtered through dusty windows. Judge from Silver City sat stern. Eliza rigid beside Gray Wolf. Slade spoke first, land grab using the child. This is about a boy, Judge interrupted. Blake testified. Order can't have harboring. Gray Wolf rose, reading the letter. Swift Arrow died saving me. Harris testified treaties. Door opened. Singing bird silhouetted. Mama. Little Fox ran to her. She scooped him. I am his mother, but he calls her Mama. We share. Judge cleared throat. No charges. Bounty null. Slade leave by sundown. Celebration erupted, bonfire feast. Apologies. Singing Bird and Eliza sat under cottonwood. You are worthy mother. Gray Wolf handed Eliza a carved box, her hymn chimed. Week passed, new cabin built for Singing Bird facing east. Eliza signed deed, Mercy Canyon, homestead. Bucknell's wagon brought letter for Singing Bird clan welcomes. School marm offered lessons. Preacher and Gray Wolf prayed on Ridge Go Slade. Spring mellowed to summer. Cabins stood guardians. Little Fox flourished, learning words from both mothers. Town gathering dishes shared hymns sung. Eliza's new hymn, Mercy at Canyon Ridge. Family grew. News orphan girl from Fever. We'll take her. Sign carved Mercy Canyon, all welcome. Valley Peaceful Mercy's Testament. To expand this narrative to a full 5,000 words, let's delve deeper into the characters' inner worlds, the vivid landscapes of the American West, and the intricate web of emotions, conflicts, and resolutions that weave through this tale of redemption and family. The story begins in earnest with Eliza's auction, a scene laden with the harsh realities of frontier life. The town square, baked under the unrelenting sun, becomes a stage for human degradation, where dreams are bartered for coins and dignity is stripped away like old wallpaper. Eliza, standing there, feels the weight of every stare, every snicker, as if they are physical blows. Her mind flashes to the workhouse, a place of endless gray days where the clang of metal and the coughs of dust-choked lungs were her constant companions. She remembers the day she arrived as a child orphaned by a wagon accident that claimed her parents on the trail from Missouri, their bodies left to the vultures while she was shuttled to the workhouse like unwanted freight. Grey Wolf's intervention is not just a purchase, but a liberation, though Eliza doesn't see it that way at first. As the wagon rumbles away, she contemplates jumping off, running back to the known hell, rather than facing the unknown. But the mountains rise around her, majestic and intimidating, their peaks capped with snow, even in summer, reminding her that escape would mean death by starvation or wild animals. The trail is a gauntlet of boulders and switchbacks, the horses straining against the incline, their hooves kicking up pebbles that ping like bullets. Grey Wolf's silence is a wall, but it's not hostile. It's the silence of a man who has learned to speak only when words matter, honed by years of scouting, where a loose tongue could mean a lost scalp. Arriving at the cabin, Eliza explores its nooks with tentative steps. The hearth is built from river stones, all is smooth and fitted perfectly, speaking to Grey Wolf's craftsmanship. The shelves hold not just food, but small treasures, a carved wooden eagle, a bundle of sage for smudging a few tattered books, perhaps pilfered from army posts or traded with travelers. Her room feels like a sanctuary, the quilt soft under her fingers, stitched with patterns that remind her of the stars she used to gaze at from the workhouse roof, dreaming of freedom. That first meal is a revelation, flavors rich and hearty, far from the thin gruel of her past. As she eats, she watches Grey Wolf through the window, his form silhouetted against the setting sun, tending to the animals with a tenderness that contradicts the town's tales of savagery. The night brings nightmares, but also the first stirrings of hope. The flashback to the raid is vivid. The night sky lit by flames, the acrid smoke burning her eyes, the scout's dying breath warm against her ear as he entrusts Little Fox to her. The baby was so small, his cries muffled against her chest as she hid in the shadows. Heart-hammering. Keeping him alive was a daily battle, stealing food, changing his rags, and secret whispering lullabies to soothe his fusses. When the guards took him, it was like losing a part of herself, the pain raw and unending. In the barn, holding the rattle, she weeps openly, the sound swallowed by the night. The days that follow are a slow unfolding of trust. Eliza's chores become voluntary, a way to earn her keep and distract from her grief. Gathering eggs, she marvels at the warm shells, the clucks of hens, a soothing symphony. Grey Wolf's lessons are patient, how to spot poisonous plants in the garden, how to mend a fence so it holds against coyotes. Their conversations start haltingly. Comments on the weather, the taste of the stew, but deepen over time. One evening, as a thunderstorm rumbles outside, flashing lightning across the cabin, she shares a snippet of her past, the wagon accident that orphaned her. Grey Wolf listens, then shares his own scar. The Army's betrayal, forcing his people onto barren lands, the battles that left him scarred, but unbroken. The arrival of Little Fox is a miracle wrapped in danger. Travis's wagon brings not just the boy, but a warning of bounties and railroad schemes, shadows of greed encroaching on their peace. Holding Little Fox, Eliza feels complete, his small body fitting perfectly in her arms, his scent a balm to her soul. Grey Wolf's acceptance is immediate, his he stays a vow etched in stone. The evening with the cradle and him is idyllic. The fire's glow casting warm shadows, the song's melody weaving through the air like a prayer. Grey Wolf's decision to take Little Fox to town is bold, a challenge to the world's prejudices. The ride down is tense, Little Fox chattering innocently about birds and rocks. In the store, the silence is oppressive eyes boring into them like bullets. Grey Wolf's declaration is a line in the sand, his hand on the boy's shoulder, a shield. The candy moment breaks the tension slightly. Little Fox's joy, a contrast to the adult's fear. The confession night deepens their bond. Eliza's story pours out the scout's heroism, the raid's chaos, the secret pregnancy and birth in hiding. Grey Wolf's letter revelation adds layers, a shared burden of truth unspoken. Spring's arrival mirrors their blossoming trust, flowers blooming the meadow, alive with color work on the coop, a symphony of hammer and saw. Little Fox's play is pure joy, his toddler steps exploring the world with wonder. The preacher's visits add spiritual depth, his words on burdens resonating. Grey Wolf's reading of the letter is a pivotal moment, the words evoking images of singing birds' grief, Swift Arrow's bravery. The telegraph's message heralds conflict, Slade's arrival a snake in the garden, his speeches stirring old fears. The raid on the cabin is visceral, chaos doors splintering Eliza's desperate run, the fight a blur of fists and grunts. Grey Wolf fights like a bear, but numbers overwhelm. Little Fox's escape into the night is heart-wrenching, his cries fading. Jail for Eliza is isolation amplified, the cold stone mirroring her despair. The preacher's visits and her hymns become beacons, drawing the town's women their gifts, a trickle turning to a stream of compassion. Grey Wolf's ride to the fort is epic storm raging, the line shack a refuge where memories sustain him. The fort's negotiations are tense treaties invoked like weapons. The sermon shifts tides mercy preached as salvation. The hearing is dramatic theater testimonies. The letter's reading evoking tears, Singing Bird's entrance, a revelation. Her offer to share motherhood is grace personified. The celebration is communal healing. Food shared songs, sung apologies, mending fences. The music box is Grey Wolf's quiet love letter to Eliza. The new cabin's construction is labor of love facing east for Navajo tradition. The deed signing empowers Eliza Mercy Canyon a symbol. The orphan's arrival expands the family, the sign welcoming all. The valley under summer sun embodies mercy's triumph, a western saga of broken chains and mended hearts.